Rusty watched the dawn blossom into light. At first, everything was dark. Then gradually objects began to take shape. The desk and chair, the walls of the room, and the darkness lifted like the raising of a veil, and over the treetops the sky was streaked with crimson. It was like this for some time, while everything became clearer and more distinguishable. And then, when the nature was ready, the sun reached up over the trees and hills and sent one tentative beam of warm light through the window. Along the wall crept the sun, across to the bed, and up to the boy's bare legs, until it was caressing his entire body and whispering to him to get up, it's time to get up. Rusty blinked. He sat up and rubbed his eyes and looked around. It was his first morning in the room, and perched on the windowsill was a small brown and yellow bird, a myna, looking at him with its head cocked to one side. The myna was a common sight, but this one was unusual. It was bald. All the feathers had been knocked off its head in a series of fights. Rusty wondered if he should get up and bathe or wait for someone to arrive. But he didn't wait long. Something bumped him from under the bed. He stiffened with apprehension. Something was moving beneath him. The mattress rose gently and fell. Could it be a jackal or a wolf that had stolen in through the open door during the night? Rusty trembled, but did not move. It might be something even more dangerous. The house was close to the jungle. Or it might be a thief. But what was there to steal? Unable to bear the suspense, Rusty brought his fists down on the uneven lump in the quilt, and Kishen sprang out with a cry of pain and astonishment. He sat on his bottom and cursed Rusty. "Sorry," said Rusty, "but you frightened me." "I'm glad because you hurt me, mister." "Your fault. What's the time?" "Time to get up. I've brought you some milk, and you can have mine too. I hate it. It spoils the flavor of my chewing gum." Kishen accompanied Rusty to the water tank, where they met Somi. After they had bathed and filled their sohrais with drinking water, they went back to the room for the first lesson. Kishen and Rusty sat cross-legged on the bed, facing each other. Rusty fingered his chin, and Kishen played with his toes. "What do you want to learn today?" asked Rusty. "How should I know? That's your problem, partner. As it's the first day, you can make a choice." "Let's play knots and crosses." "Be serious. Tell me, Bhaiya, what books have you read?" Kishen turned his eyes up to the ceiling. "I've read so many, I can't remember the names." "Well, you can tell me what they were about." Kishen looked disconcerted. "Oh, sure. Let me see now. What about the one in which everyone went down a rabbit hole?" "What about it?" "Called Treasure Island." "Hell," said Rusty. "Which ones have you read?" asked Kishen, warming to the discussion. "Treasure Island and the one about the rabbit hole, and you haven't read either. What do you want to be when you grow up, Kishen? A businessman? An officer? An engineer?" "Don't want to be anything. What about you?" "You're not supposed to be asking me, but if you want to know, I'm going to be a writer. I'll write books. You'll read them." "You'll be a great writer, Rusty. You'll be great." "Maybe. Who knows?" "I know," said Kishen quite sincerely. "You will be a terrific writer. You'll be famous. You'll be a king." "Shut up." The Kapoors liked Rusty. They didn't admire him, but they liked him. Kishen liked him for his company, Kapoor liked him for his flattering conversation, and Mina liked him because he liked her. The Kapoors were glad to have him in their house. Mina had been betrothed to Kapoor since childhood, before they knew each other, and despite the fact that there was a difference of nearly 20 years between their ages. Kapoor was a promising young man, intelligent and beginning to make money, and Mina, at 13, possessed the freshness and promise of spring. After they were married, they fell in love. They toured Europe and Kapoor returned a connoisseur of wine. Kishen was born, looking just like his father. Kapoor never stopped loving his wife, but his passion for her was never so great as when the warmth of old wine filled him with poetry. Mina had a noble nose and forehead, aristocratic, said Kapoor. She has blue blood and long raven black hair, like seaweed, said Kapoor, dizzy with possessive glory. She was tall, strong, perfectly formed, and she had grace and charm and quick wit. Kapoor lived in his beard and green dressing gown, something of an outcast. The self-made man likes to boast of humble origins and initial poverty, and his rise from rags can be turned to effective publicity. The man who has lost much recalls past exploits and the good name of his family, and the failure at least publicizes these things. But Kapoor had gone full cycle. He could no longer harp on the rise from rags because he was fast becoming ragged, and he had no background except the one which he himself created and destroyed. He had nothing but a dwindling bank balance, a wife and a son, and the wife was his best asset. But on the evening of Rusty's second day in the room, no one would have guessed at the family's plight. Rusty sat with them in the front room, and Kapoor extolled the virtues of chewing gum, much to Kishen's delight and Mina's disgust. "Chewing gum," declared Kapoor, waving a finger in the air, "is the secret of youth. Have you observed the Americans, how young they look, and the English, how haggard? It has nothing to do with responsibilities. It is chewing gum. By chewing, you exercise your jaws and the muscles of your face. This improves your complexion and strengthens the tissues of your skin." "You are very clever, Daddy," said Kishen. "I'm a genius," said Kapoor. "I'm a genius." "The fool," whispered Mina, so that only Rusty could hear. Rusty said, "I have an idea. Let's form a club." "Good idea," exclaimed Kishen. "What do we call it?" "Before we call it anything, we must decide what sort of club it should be. We must have rules. We must have a president, a secretary." All right, interrupted Kishen, who was sprawling on the floor. "You can be all those things if you like, but what I say is, the most important thing in a club is name. Without a good name, what's the use of a club?" "The Fool's Club," suggested Mina. "Inappropriate," said Kapoor. "Inappropriate." "Everyone shut up," ordered Kishen, prodding at his nose. "I'm trying to think." They all shut up and tried to think. This thinking was a very complicated process, and it soon became obvious that no one had been thinking of the club, for Rusty was looking at Mina thinking, and Mina was wondering if Kishen knew how to think, and Kishen was really thinking about the benefits of chewing gum, and Kapoor was smelling the whiskey bottles behind the screen and thinking of them. At last Kapoor observed, "My wife is a devil. A beautiful, beautiful devil." This seemed an interesting line of conversation, and Rusty was about to follow it up with a compliment of his own, when Kishen burst out brilliantly. "I know, the Devil's Club. How's that?" "Aha!" exclaimed Kapoor. "The Devil's Club. We've got it. I'm a genius." They got down to the business of planning the club's activities. Kishen proposed carom and Mina seconded, and Rusty looked dismayed. Kapoor proposed literary and political discussions, and Rusty, just to spite the others, seconded the proposal. Then they elected officers of the club. Mina was given the title of Our Lady and Patroness. Kapoor was elected president, Rusty the secretary, and Kishen the chief whip. Somi, Ranbir, and Suri, though absent, were accepted as honorary members. "Carom and discussions are not enough," complained Kishen. "We must have adventures." "What kind?" asked Rusty. "Climb mountains or something?" "A picnic," proposed Mina. picnic, seconded Kishen, and Somi and the others can come too. Let's drink to it, said Kapoor, rising from his chair. Let's celebrate. Good idea, said Kishen, foiling his father's plan of action. We'll go to the chaat shop. As far as Mina was concerned, the chaat shop was the lesser of the two evils, so Kapoor was bundled into the old car and taken to the bazaar. To the chaat shop, he cried, falling across the steering wheel. We will bring it home. The chaat shop was so tightly crowded that people were breathing each other's breath. The chatwala was very pleased with Rusty for bringing in so many new customers, a whole family, and beamed on the party, rubbing his hands and greasing the frying pan with enthusiasm. Everything, ordered Kapoor. We will have something of everything. So the chatwala patted his cakes into shape and flipped them into the sizzling grease, and fashioned his golgappas over the fire, filling them with the juice of the devil. Mina sat curled up on a chair facing Rusty. The boy stared at her. She looked quaint, sitting in this unfamiliar posture. Her eyes encountered Rusty's stare, mocking it. In hot confusion, Rusty moved his eyes upward, up the wall, onto the ceiling, until they could go no further. What are you looking at? Asked Kishen. Rusty brought his eyes to the ground and pretended not to have heard. He turned to Kapoor and said, What about politics? The chatwala handed out 4 big banana leaves, but Kapoor wouldn't eat. Instead, he cried, Take the chat shop to the house. Put it in the car. We must have it. We must have it. We must have it. The chatwala, who was used to displays of drunkenness in one form or another, humoured Kapoor. It's all yours, Lalaji, but take me with you too, or who will run the shop? We will, shouted Kishen, infected by his father's enthusiasm. Buy it, Daddy. Mummy can make the tikis and I'll sell them and Rusty can do the accounts. Kapoor threw his banana leaf off the floor and wrapped his arms around Kishen. Yes, we will run it. Take it to the house. And making a lunge at a bowl of chaat, fell to his knees. Rusty helped Kapoor get up, then looked to Mina for guidance. She said nothing, but gave him a nod, and the boy found he understood the nod. He said, It's a wonderful idea, Mr. Kapoor. Just put me in charge of everything. You and Mina go home and get a spare room ready for the supplies, and Kishen and I will make all the arrangements with the chatwala. Kapoor clung to Rusty, the spittle dribbling down his cheeks. Good boy, good boy. We will make lots of money together, you and I. He turned to his wife and waved his arm grandiloquently. We will be rich again, Mina. What do you say? Mina, as usual, said nothing, but took Kapoor by the arm and bundled him out of the shop and into the car. Be quick with the chaat shop, cried Kapoor. I will have it in the house in 5 minutes, called Rusty. Get everything ready. He returned to Kishen, who was stuffing himself with chaat. His father's behavior did not appear to have affected him. He was unconscious of its ridiculous aspect and felt no shame. He was unconscious, too, of the considerate manner of the chatwala, who felt sorry for the neglected child. The chatwala did not know that Kishen enjoyed being neglected. Rusty said, Come, let's go. What's the hurry, Rusty? Sit down and eat. There's plenty of dough tonight. At least give Mummy time to put the sleeping tablets in the whiskey. So they sat and ate their fill and listened to other people's gossip. Then Kishen suggested that they explore the bazaar. The oil lamps were lit and the main road bright and crowded. But Kishen and Rusty went down an alleyway where the smells were more complicated and the noise intermittent. 2 women spoke to each other from their windows on either side of the road. A baby cried monotonously. A cheap gramophone blared. Kishen and Rusty walked aimlessly through the maze of alleyways. Why are you white like Suri? Asked Kishen. Why is Suri white? He is Kashmiri. They are fair. Well, I am English. English? Said Kishen disbelievingly. You? But you do not look like one. Rusty hesitated. He did not feel there was any point in raking up a past that was as much a mystery to him as it was to Kishen. I don't know, he said. I never saw my parents, and I don't care what they were, and I don't care what I am, and I'm not very interested. But he couldn't help wondering, and Kishen couldn't help wondering. So they walked on in silence, wondering. They reached the railway station, which was the end of the bazaar. The gates were closed, but they peered through the railings at the goods wagons. A pleasure house did business near the station. If you want to have fun, said Kishen, let's climb that roof. From the skylight you can see everything. No fun in just watching, said Rusty. Have you ever watched? Of course, lied Rusty, turning homewards. He walked with a distracted air. What are you thinking of? Asked Kishen. Nothing. You must be in love. That's right. Who is it, eh? If I told you, said Rusty, you'd be jealous. But I'm not in love with anybody. Come on, tell me, I'm your friend. Would you be angry if I said I loved your mother? Mummy, exclaimed Kishen. But she's old. She's married. Hell, who would think of falling in love with Mummy? Don't joke, mister. I'm sorry, said Rusty. They walked on in silence and crossed the Maidan, leaving the bazaar behind. It was dark on the Maidan. They could hardly see each other's faces. Kishen put his hand on Rusty's shoulder. If you love her, he said, I'm not jealous, but it sounds funny.